Hello you beautiful misfits, my name is Matt and this is Pixelburn, where, after an admittedly lengthy absence, I continue taking a snarky look at some of the more important, interesting or irritating things to have happened in the week's gaming news. Or rather one particular piece of news in this week's case. We begin with a public service announcement of sorts for the benefit of streamers, YouTubers and pretty much anyone else thinking of sharing video footage of Persona 5. Is there anyone out there who still isn't clear about what streaming Persona 5 does? Okay, last time. This is your channel. This is Persona 5. This here's a DMCA claim. Any questions? Or to put it less metaphorically, don't. At least, don't show anything past a specific date on the in-game calendar. Yes, as Persona 5 finally became available to purchase for envious Westerners itching to jump into the shoes of kooky Japanese delinquents, the game's publisher Atlus issued some guidelines for people looking to live stream it, make YouTube videos about it, or otherwise display the game for the eyes and ears of others. Atlus's official reason for this is, to put it very simply, they don't want the game spoiled for people who haven't played it. Now if you don't have a capture card, then good news! Atlus have done all the heavy lifting of not spoiling Persona 5 for others for you by disabling all PS4 sharing functions for the game. So you won't be able to share even a single screenshot, let alone a video, unless you throw your dignity and self-respect into a yawning abyss by filming the screen with your phone like it's 2010. On the other hand, if you're the sort of well-heeled professional who does have a capture card, then congratulations, you're the main target for Atlus's guidelines, polite suggestions and veiled threats. Whether you're a Twitch streamer, a YouTube Let's Player, or one of the increasingly common hybrids of both, Atlus kindly asks you abide by the following rules. The most important one stressed by Atlus, and Isaac Asimov-esque zeroth law upon which all others are founded if you will, is you are not to show any content beyond the in-game date of July 7th. Apparently this is a significant point in the game's story and any videos showing what's beyond it are highly spoilerific. So now you know a somewhat important story event happens when the game reaches July 7th. On the bright side, you are allowed to post as much footage as you care to of the parts of the game before that date, so long as each video is no longer than 90 minutes, which isn't really so much a restriction as just simple good advice on the absolute longest time any Let's Play episode should ever really be. Look, some of us have jobs and stuff, okay? The second rule is no major spoilers, which Atlus are leaving up to the player's judgment. Just so long as that judgment doesn't include the ending segments of the first 3 dungeons, social interactions with a character called Yusuke and his corresponding awakening scene, the story behind a certain painting, a cameo featuring the Dojima family from Persona 4, or anything at all to do with a certain student investigator. So now you know there's also a character called Yusuke who can join your party, there's a painting you should keep an eye out for, as well as a cameo from Ryotaro and Nanako Dojima from Persona 4. Oh, and if you find a student character who seems to be investigating something, chances are they're probably somewhat important to the story. Do you see where I'm going with this? That rule about not showing the ending segment of dungeons also covers every single boss except for one called Kamoshida. Apparently Atlus don't mind him being spoiled for people, so here's a screenshot of the bloke. Hey, don't have a go at me, I'm only helping to pass on Atlus's guidelines. Those aforementioned restrictions aside, Atlus say you can do as many 90 minutes or under videos as you like of game content before the 7/7 cutoff date. They do however ask that you focus primarily on the dungeon crawling and wandering around Tokyo talking to NPCs segments, aka 90% of the most tedious bits of busy work in damn near every single Persona game. According to Atlus, if you fail to heed the 7/7 cutoff date rule, and presumably any of the others too, they will come into your house through your TV and straight up fucking murder you. Okay, not really. They actually said you risk being issued a content claim, or worse, a channel strike or account suspension. But given how seemingly arbitrary these guidelines are, would you really have been surprised if they did threaten to murder you? By the way, that bit I mentioned earlier about Nanako and her dad from Persona 4 making a cameo? Totally made that up. Just threw it in there for a laugh.
Nanako, get daddy another beer.
Naturally, these rules have ruffled a few feathers amongst Twitch streamers and YouTubers who'd been itching to show off the game to their viewers in all its contemporary supernatural anime glory. It's also thrown a spanner in the works for channels like Super Best Friends Play, who had 3 episodes of a Persona 5 Let's Play in the bag and ready to go before Atlus issued their guidelines. Super Best Friends made the decision to cancel their Persona 5 Let's Play very soon afterwards, although you can at least still watch the first 3 episodes. They were no doubt mindful of Atlus's draconian reaction to videos of Persona 4 Dancing All Night about 2 years ago, which saw channels with as few as 9 subscribers hit with manual copyright strikes, meaning they weren't picked up by a robot matching the footage to its databanks bleep bloop bleep bloop, but by a flesh and blood human being in Japan seeing the video and thinking, well, that's got to go. Now, to play six-titted devil's advocate for just a moment, Persona 5 is Atlus's intellectual property and they are within their legal right to enforce how that IP is represented. Laws you don't like are still laws nonetheless. The fact most publishers and developers are smart enough to turn a blind eye, or even outright encourage their games to be streamed, doesn't refute the fact that, legally, they can probably clamp down on the whole thing anytime they want. On the other hand, in United States law at least, fair use permits limited use of copyrighted material without having to first acquire permission from the copyright holder, so long as the end result can be legally considered a transformative work. But until some big YouTuber or streamer actually takes the issue to federal court and wins, thereby establishing a legal precedent, the subject of fair use when playing video games for money and an audience will continue to be the grey, murky legal morass it currently is. While the legality of all this may be fuzzy and indistinct, however, the rationality behind Atlus's decision is much more clear-cut. It's really fucking stupid. Firstly, while Twitch has publicly advised its users to bow to the will of Atlus, if this page of Persona 5 Twitch streams is anything to go on, they're not doing much else. To be fair, there's little they can do to enforce Atlus's very specific streaming rules, short of either banning the game entirely or getting someone who's already finished Persona 5 to check every ongoing stream for glimpses of the in-game calendar. YouTube has said nothing official regarding Atlus's guidelines, but then it doesn't have to, since flagging videos on YouTube is as easy as breathing is for most people. Atlus's argument about not wanting a story-focused game to be spoiled is also ridiculous when you consider Persona 5 has already been out in Japan for 6 months, and that bilingual people exist. And that assumes avoiding spoilers is a cast iron, argument-ending mic drop against letting people stream your game, which it isn't. Take Telltale for example. All their titles are similarly linear, single plot affairs with some minor deviation depending on player choice, and they have no qualms about letting people stream or record their games in their entirety. In fact, they actively encourage it. So much so, they even added a special crowd play feature to their Batman game, specifically to let a streamer's audience vote on decisions and dialogue choices. That's because Telltale and other developers understand that a game's story is only part of the experience, even if the game is primarily story. You'd be very hard pressed to find 2 players who had the absolute exact same experience, because the combination of story and gameplay decisions made throughout a game is unique to each player. Also, not everyone who watches a Let's Play or live stream does so to see a game they don't own. For example, I've played the ever-living hell out of Hollow Knight to 100% completion because it's just that good, yet I still enjoy watching people play it for the first time. And if I am watching a live stream or Let's Play of a game I don't own, chances are I'll be tempted to buy it. I bought Stellaris almost entirely on the basis of stumbling on a playthrough by many a true nerd on YouTube. I've also purchased the new Utopia expansion for it, which came out this week. Finally, I'd like to bring up Giant Bomb's Persona 4 Endurance run, which played a not insignificant part in bringing the Persona franchise to a wider public awareness.
And there you go, the end of our Persona 4 Endurance run. We've reached the end of the game, because it can't get any better than this.
A fact that Atlus's American division is perfectly happy and willing to acknowledge.
Your Persona 4 playthrough is legendary. You know, our office loves it, and Charlie Tanoku lives.
Of course, the series had its die-hard fans long before Jeff and Vinny ever got their hands on a copy of Persona 4, but it wasn't a recognisable name to many average PlayStation owners the same way Final Fantasy is. The entire point of such recorded playthroughs is, or should be, to highlight the games being played and bring them to the attention of people who might never have even heard of them otherwise. But then the overwhelming majority of you already know and understand these arguments because you're not Japanese executives living in the past. Although, a question we should perhaps be asking is, which executives and which corporation? Because blaming this all on Atlus Japan might be jumping the proverbial Persona 3 Evoker somewhat. Puyo Puyo Tetris, launching in North America later this month, is another game coming this year that has also had its sharing functions completely disabled for the PS4 version. It has likewise also had a list of rules published for people with capture cards able to circumvent such blocks. In a nutshell, players who want to share clips from their Puyo Puyo Tetris experience may do so on their, and I quote, personal and non-profit blog, homepage and Twitter. Uploading footage to dedicated video sites is also allowed, though only on the condition that it's not for commercial gain, which of course rules out monetized YouTube videos and Twitch streams. The common element linking these two otherwise completely disparate games, a JRPG and a puzzle game, is of course Sega. Puyo Puyo Tetris is made by Sonic Team, who, in case it wasn't bleedingly obvious, are a division of Sega. Meanwhile, Atlus, in case you'd forgotten already, was bought out by Sega almost exactly a year ago. Although that could merely be a coincidence. After all, it's not like Sega has a history of being complete and utter dicks to YouTubers or anything, right? Oh wait, yeah, they do. Who remembers Sega's little YouTube DMCA campaign about 5 years ago? You know, when they did a massive blitz on any and all videos even tangentially connected to the Shining Force series, because they were releasing a new installment on the PSP and didn't want people seeing footage of the old Shining games in their search results. Even going so far as to issue claims on videos of Shining Force 3, a game that's almost 20 years old by now, as well as vlogs, fucking vlogs, of people simply talking about the old Shining Force games. So yeah, Sega owns Atlus and has prior history of pissing over YouTubers. Atlus meanwhile generally puts some real thought and effort into its game's Western localizations, which still doesn't stop some mewling ninnies whinging about it, recognises the support of their Western fans, and appears to understand and accept that the Western gaming scene is markedly different in many ways from Japan's. Plus, the tone of the guidelines themselves, written by someone at Atlus USA, are so packed between the lines with obvious remorse, you'd almost swear whoever wrote them literally had a gun pressed against their skull. So Sega are clearly the real bad guys here, right? No, it's not really quite that simple. As I mentioned earlier, Atlus does have prior history of dicking around with YouTubers by hitting videos of Persona 4 dancing all night with copyright strikes. Although I didn't mention they also pulled the exact same stunt on reaction videos to the Persona 5 trailer. Like this one by a chap called RJC over at YouTube channel The Compendium, which got hit with a manual copyright strike in 2015 courtesy of Atlus Japan's official YouTube channel. Not content with that, however, Atlus Japan then proceeded to issue strikes on all the parts of RJC's Persona 4 Dancing All Night Let's Play he was doing at the time. As most of you know, it only takes 3 copyright strikes to completely kill a channel. Atlus Japan hit him with at least 16 of the things. Fortunately, there was a happy ending. RJC's fans urged him to contact Atlus directly about it, which he did, and a few days later they removed all the strikes, whereupon his channel returned from the dead as though nothing had ever happened. By the way, both these incidents of dickery to online gaming video content makery bobs happened before Atlus's purchase by Sega in April 2016. Yet in spite of that, I'm still more inclined to believe Sega are the ones being the dicks here, and I was a Sega kid growing up. The key piece of evidence for me is the damn near exact same streaming restrictions as Persona 5 being slapped on Puyo Puyo Tetris, something Atlus would have precisely zero influence on. I mean, no offence to the creators of Puyo Puyo Tetris, but I doubt its story mode is quite as philosophical, psychological, rife with social commentary, or as vulnerable to spoilers as those of the Persona titles. In conclusion, if these guidelines did come only from Atlus, then they're incredibly nearsighted, bloody stupid, and go completely against all the reasons for Atlus's semi-recent Western popularity. If on the other hand it's Sega's corporate brass that are calling the shots here, then we're witnessing a relapse into some bad old habits, not to mention a whole new dimension of sheer fucking idiocy. Or, perhaps, the whole thing is a smokescreen, and the real reason behind these restrictions is that Jeff and Vinny have secretly negotiated the exclusive rights to a complete, unrestricted, uncensored, 100% endurance run of Persona 5.
Nothing stops the endurance run, motherfucker.
Hey, a man can dream, can't he? That's all for this one episode of Pixel Burn, I'm afraid, though if you still liked it for some bizarre reason, then let me know by clicking the requisite like button down below, and let your friends, your family, and the personification of your Jungian shadow know as well. because YouTube sure as hell fucking won't. It appears I've been deemed too raw for the delicate sensibilities of YouTube's target audience. That target audience being a market research work of fantasy comprised of elves, children who never swear, unicorns, and people so fragile they'd collapse into the fetal position at the very notion of saying boo to a goose. At the very least, I hope you mature adults, old and young alike, found it tolerable. Meanwhile, till next time, whenever that will be, you can go now.